Hey, what's up folks? How's it going? This is Watch from MW Technology, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Tesla Model 3 and Y, and specifically installing a rear display. Now initially when I got these cars, I wanted to upgrade the back because right now the new S, X, and indeed the new Model 3 Highland actually have rear screen entertainment. And one of the biggest reasons why I want to do so is when you're at the back, you really don't have control over your fan speed, your seat controls, and it would be nice to have some rear screen entertainment for long trips. Now, right now on all of the older Model 3s and all the current generation Model Ys, you don't have rear screen options until the new Model Y comes out eventually. But if you want to do this on an older Tesla 3 or Y, there's a ton of aftermarket solutions out there. We're going to be taking a look at one from pimpmyev.com. They have a version 4 of their rear display, which looks quite similar to the Model S and X version in terms of its silver trim. It has a ton of interesting features and a couple of improvements from the previous iterations, including a larger ventilation hose for better airflow. You can control the front passenger seat up and down so you get more leg room at the back. And there's obviously Android integration, so you can download different apps from the Android operating system and the Play Store and play all the games and watch YouTube videos and Netflix and things like that. So we're going to get through the full installation process, start to finish. Then we're going to review the unit, talk about the pros and cons, see if it's actually worth installing. You could obviously skip ahead to the review if you're interested in that, since the video is time-stamped. Okay, so I just want to show you guys what comes inside the package. Basically, you have this large trim piece over here. This is the middle trim section that goes behind the center console. And at the top, you can see we have our air vents with left-right controls for both left and right side of the passengers. You can see that we have a empty USB-C housing, and it also comes with a USB Type A. If you have an older car, there's just 2 screws you take off and simply swap the plates and you have the Type A connections. And over here you can have built-in speakers as well as a USB-A connection, a small little microphone, so if you can do some voice commands and things like that, a reset pin button, as well as I believe a micro SIM card, or just a SIM card, basically if you want data. But for what I've seen so far in most people's reviews is this doesn't really work too much in the US or really anywhere. So we'll test it out, see if you can get mobile data out of its own thing, since you can't really use the Tesla computer to do a hotspot or anything like that. If you want internet, you're gonna have to do that on your own phone. Now, that's pretty much it. On the back side over here, you could see that we have a little bracket area for the ventilation housing that we're going to install into the car. And here is where you're going to install the actual USB-C module. Since this is an empty housing, we're going to need to take the factory module and transpose it into there. We have a ribbon connection over here, as well as the speaker connector cable over here. The display itself is pretty simple. As you can see, it doesn't really come installed in the housing or the outer trim piece that's located over here. So you are going to need to basically screw this in to the bracket that way, which we'll do in the car. At the back, you have this connection over here, which is going to go to the harness, as well as the speaker connector over here, which is actually going to connect directly into this speaker that's in the middle trim. And then you have the ribbon connection over here, which there is actually a ribbon connector that goes from here to here to make that connection happen. Now let me talk you through the wiring harness over here. Here we have this ODB tap connection over here. So basically you take out the blue connection that's at the bottom of the center console at the rear side, and you simply plug this into that existing plug. You take that empty existing plug and plug it into here. Pretty simple there. You have 2 larger connections over here. One goes into this control module that simply connects in this way, like there. And then on the other side, you have this connection that actually connects to the display. So you can see that over here, right on the display, we have that same connection, and that simply goes in like that. We'll do that in the car. On the other side, you have 2 longer cables. One is a slightly thicker one than the other. The thicker one actually goes to the passenger side seat adjustment control module, and you can simply feed it through underneath the carpet to get to there. We'll show you how to do that. This will allow you to basically control the front passenger seat up and down, reclining to get you extra leg room at the back. And over here, it actually goes to the front driver's side controller, and this is going to allow you to do the lumbar massage feature that this display can do. Probably not going to install that, but basically using the lumbar support, you can emulate a massage with this control. But we're probably not going to install that. We are going to install the passenger side controller though. Now, just to make our lives a little bit easier, I've attached some Velcro onto here and to here. This doesn't really need to go anywhere. Once it's connected to the harness, it's just going to float around, so it's just better to get it kind of out of the way. So I'm just going to put it there. Nice thing about Velcro is you can adjust it accordingly if you need to. Okay, so now we're in the car. We're going to simply take out that ventilation panel in the passenger side. We're basically going to use both hands, pull towards ourselves, and it'll simply come out. There's just clips holding it. There's no screws involved. At the back, you'll see one connector for the USB-C module. We're going to simply pull that connector apart, and then you're going to use your trim removal tool and pry open the bottom portion. It does take a little bit of finessing, but you'll eventually get it out, and there's no screws involved in taking that out. Right above the blue ODB connector, you'll see two Torx 20 screws that you can simply screw out using your Allen key or screwdriver. Once that is done, you're pretty much free to take off the middle belly panel. Now we have this vent controller out of the car. We're going to need to take the USB-C connections out of this and transplant it into this empty housing over here with the USB-C connections, and you can see there's nothing really there. We're also going to need to install this air vent over here. That's going to replace this factory one over here. Now to get to it, we are going to need to take off this air vent. So there's two Torx 20 screws over there that we're going to need to remove, and then we're going to need to jimmy up and remove some of these clips that hold this vent housing together. So let's go ahead and do that. Now with our Torx screwdriver, we're just going to basically take out those two screws holding the vent onto the panel. Okay, so now that we have the two screws out, it's just a matter of kind of pushing this out of place. And you could just kind of free it up like this, and then it comes out. And you can see that there's a couple of clips over here that use a little bit of friction, and you simply could just pop it out like this. Then you can see at the back of this module, we have these two Torx 10 screws that we could just take out. And once we have that out, it should be free to just remove off this housing. Now, just for safekeeping, we are not going to use these for the time being, but it's definitely important to keep this on hand if you ever want to go back to factory spec for whatever reason. And I'm probably not going to click it back into place, but I will put back the factory screws in here just so I don't lose them, and I'll put them somewhere safe where I can get it later. I'm also going to screw these Torx 10 screws back into over here because we're probably going to be using the factory screws that are supplied to hook up the bracket to the USB module. So probably not going to need these. So I'm also going to put these back in this area so I don't lose them. The way this USB-C is going to be installed into this bracket is it simply goes in this way where the USB Type-C connections are facing up. And you just go underneath the air vent opening over here. Line it up through the USB-C connections, you can see through, and then you can see that the two holes align up. We'll use these Phillips screws that are supplied with the unit and screw them in. We're not going to do that just yet because you can see that there's a connector that we need to hook up to the USB-Cs, and if we do that right now, we're simply not going to have probably the clearance to make that connection happen. So we're going to probably do this inside the car. Back in the car, we're going to take out the blue ODB connection, and basically this has a little tab. You pull that out, it comes out pretty easily. Then you want to take our tap connection, connect the female to the male, male to the female, pretty simple there. Then we're going to go to the top where you see the hinge for your center console. You're going to take out the right hand side Torx 20 screw. And then we're going to use that same screw to basically mount our aftermarket ventilation housing. This has foam on the interior side where it meets to the factory ventilation system, and we're simply going to fit it into the tabs. It only really fits in one way. Line up that existing hole that we used initially. We're going to use that same exact Torx 20 screwdriver to secure this vent housing into place. Once that's done, we're going to take our aftermarket middle belly pan, and if you remember that control module, we stuck a little bit of Velcro onto it, and we're going to basically place it back into where we stuck the Velcro, just so it's kind of out of the way, making cable management a little easier. We're going to use our ribbon cable. It only goes in one way. Basically line up the copper to the copper and snap it into place. And then we're going to take our speaker connection from our wiring harness and connect it to the speaker inside that middle panel. Next, we're going to connect our USB-C module. So we're going to take the connector that we took out initially, plug it back into the USB-C module, and then we're going to feed it into the empty housing, line it up with the holes, and we're going to use the provided screws to basically screw that housing into place. After that, we're going to take two of the main cables that are left that are going to plug into the screen. We're going to feed it around the vents so there's no interference with the airflow, and we're just going to basically line up the vent with the panel over here. Use two of the Phillips screws to secure it into place, and then we're going to connect one of the ribbon cables to the display. It only goes in one way, so that's pretty easy, and then connect the other connector as well. And then as soon as you do so, it'll power the display right on, and it'll boot up for the first time. You'll see the Model S intro, and we can now screw this into place. There's just 3 Phillips screws that line up with the housing, and it's pretty simple there. Now we're going to basically screw the Torx 20 screws at the bottom portion, securing the middle panel, and then we're going to take the seat connection cable that is going to control the front passenger seat. We're going to feed it underneath the rails and underneath the carpet, and then we're going to feed it around to the front seat side. We're going to go all the way up and all the way forward on the seat, so we have access to this one Torx 20 bit. This, you want to use a low profile Torx wrench and just torque it, and it'll come out. The panel will come free, and you'll be exposed to the connector for the controller itself. Take out the existing factory plug, and we're going to tap into it using our wiring harness that we just fed through underneath the seat. We're going to connect the male end to the actual control panel, and then the female end to the cable that we just disconnected. Then we're going to put the panel back together, screw in the Torx 20 bit, and then we're going to verify that the seat does recline and go backwards and forwards. And as you can see, we had a successful connection. You can also take this time to test out the HVAC system to make sure your system is working. So we'll make sure that the seat heaters are working, and you want to make sure that your HVAC system is turned on the front, because you can't turn it on from the back. So just verify that everything does work, and it's working perfectly fine over here. After that, you can tuck in the excess wiring harness inside the center console, and then use that outer trim piece to put everything back together, and it'll snap right back in, as you can see over here. And then we're going to put in the outer trim piece for the display. There's just a couple of tabs that it has to go in. Just line everything up and push in, and it should snap right into place. Okay, so now that we have everything installed, everything looks pretty good. We're going to run through the UI, talk you through all the main features. What you're going to see over here is the main HVAC controls, which right now are off because we can't turn it on until the front main computer turns on the main HVAC system and also turns on the rear HVAC systems. That's how we get access to that. So I'm going to go ahead, quickly do that. Okay, so now that we have the HVAC system on from the front, we can now control it from the back over here. So you have full fan speed control all the way up and all the way down. You can also control the dual zone climate settings over here for temperature, and you have an automatic setting over there, and you can also turn off everything by hitting that button over there. If you go into this little sub menu over here, here you have the rear seat controls. We can control all 3 seats at all 3 levels, which is pretty cool. And then you have the front passenger seat controls over here, where we can go all the way up to get the best leg room. And we can also set this upright, reclining, or declining. Over here you have basic controls for the Bluetooth, so you can actually pause and play stuff that's connected to the main car's Bluetooth controls, volume up and volume down for the entire car as well. After that, you have a little music where you could put stuff onto either the Android OS over here or via USB stick and play MP3s or FLAC files and things like that. This is your main app library over here they have installed. You have the full Android operating system over here, so you have access to pretty much the entire Play Store. So that means all the games, all the apps that you would ever want. Additionally, there is this floating ball menu over here, which is pretty handy. This will take you directly to the home. You can control the brightness, go back, as well as control the volume for the built-in speaker over here. And you could also control turn the whole thing off, and you have a little set menu over here with the time and date. If we go back over here, you'll also notice your settings over here for your network and some of your basic settings for the actual display unit itself in terms of managing the theme, light or dark, automatic. You can also change the screen brightness over here. You can go by Android time or the car time, change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And you can also turn the floating ball on and off. Next over here you have your network settings for your Android, for your Wi-Fi connection over here, which uses the Android networking menus, and you can do factory resets, things like that. This is where you can do firmware upgrades and things like that. The next menu is basically your media and entertainment section. Like we mentioned before, it's running on the Android OS, so that means most apps that are for streaming, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Paramount are all pretty much available. The only exception was for whatever reason Disney Plus is not natively supported, but you can download an APK and have it installed directly onto this if you need to. The cool thing about YouTube is that obviously you need internet connection, but as long as you do, you have full YouTube access. So in terms of the volume, we'll just crank the speaker. Down the road, that a all-electric vehicle would be something that we're very interested in. It's pretty loud. It's loud enough. Which one was pretty darn obvious since... But unfortunately, the quality isn't the best, but definitely nice to have an independent speaker. And if you're wondering about how much internal space you have, well, you have 64 gigabytes in here, but as we mentioned before, you have a USB-A connection down there, which you can add additional storage, whether that be a thumb drive or an SD card slot through the USB connection. Now, I just want to talk about the pros and cons of the version 4 rear display from Pimp My EV. Now, firstly, I have to say that it looks great. Very well integrated, everything fits nicely, and the panels are quite minimalistic as well, so nobody can really tell if it's an aftermarket solution since it looks very OEM. I also like the OS. The Android platform is obviously a very universal system, very easy to navigate, and the way that they have the UI set up is pretty intuitive to use. And it's also nice to be able to control the individual seat heaters on all 3 seats and not having to nag the driver to control or turn off your seat heaters. The other thing that I like is you can control the front passenger seat, so you can move it up and down. You can even make it recline forward and backwards. So if you want more leg room on the right rear side anyways, you have plenty with that control. Furthermore, even though the audio quality of the built-in speaker isn't that great, it is still nice to have an individual independent speaker separate from the main car audio system. That way you can listen to different sources kind of at the same time. Now, moving on to the cons, one of the biggest downsides of this unit compared to the factory system is for the ventilation performance. It's a lot worse than the factory. The factory has a larger opening. You can also control the vent direction upwards, downwards, left and right. On this unit, the opening is smaller and you can only go left and right. So you can see with the visualization that we've illustrated over here, with the factory setup, you're getting plenty of air at max fan speeds at the top head position, the body, the entire body is going to get plenty of ventilation with the factory setup. Once we switch over to the aftermarket display, since the vent is located downwards and there's no upwards control for you to point the air upwards, you can see that the ventilation is really not being seen anywhere in the head or upper body position. Most of your knees are going to get the ventilation, and when it comes to heat anyways, you want to keep the head cool more than anything else. For AC performance, it's definitely a big downside. Another downside is the fact that you can't turn on the full HVAC system at the back if the front control is off. So you do need to go at the front and make sure the fans and HVAC system is on at both the front and back to have full access and controls of your ventilation system back here. Another con is, even though this is targeted for easy installation, it might be easy for some, but if you're a first-time installer, this could easily take an hour or two, if not longer, if you haven't really done any project like this, because the kit is so disassembled. It's apart from the screen, and there's many little components that you're gonna have to pre-assemble and then assemble in the car. It can be a tedious install process. Another downside has to do with the internet connectivity. Since you don't have the premium access connectivity that you have on the front computer, since this is a separate system, you can't access the internet from the car itself. You're going to either have to connect to your home Wi-Fi network or to your phone's hotspot. Another downside is that it does take a little time to boot up when you first get into the car. Unlike the front computer, which just fires up instantly, over here the Android system needs to boot up, and you're going to have to watch this Model S intro video every time, which can get a little annoying. And the last con has to do with the backlight system over here. Since this is connected to the main CAN bus computer of your Tesla, you are going to have power for an extended period of time. And for whatever reason, this version of the display that I have, the system turns off, but the backlight remains on until your computer goes into deep sleep mode, which can sometimes take a couple of hours, especially if there's updates going on. So when you first close all your doors, you're going to notice that the screen is technically off, but the backlight is still on, and there's a little bit of light coming through. And you could see that on the front screen, it'll turn off right away when you close the doors. But you're basically going to have to wait until the backlight goes off, which is only going to happen when the main computer goes into deep sleep mode. And that will drain battery life when the car is parked, pretty much unnecessary, and add to the phantom drain issues that all Teslas have. Now you can use third-party apps like TesLab, which will encourage your car to go into deep sleep mode faster than usual, but it's a step that's kind of unnecessary. Now, in conclusion, if you're thinking about installing a rear display for your older Model 3 or Model Y, I think there's definitely some benefits from a usability standpoint. The fact that you do get access to your HVAC systems from a fan speed and seat heater controls is definitely a good positive, and never could be really a downside to add functionality to your vehicle. Unfortunately, there are some serious limitations. If you really do want the best ventilation system, there is a pretty big compromise with all these screens. In fact, even if you look at the factory Tesla rear displays, their airflow is just not as good as the ones that don't have it. So that's just something that you're going to come across, and a compromise that you're going to find with most screens. This might be worse than the factory OEM rear displays that come from Tesla, because they are not 100% OEM integrated with the front computer. You don't have the internet connectivity and all the cons that we talked about earlier, but from a relatively low price point, and some are easier to install than others, I definitely think that this is still worth keeping inside the car, just for the fact that it do have extra functionality, and if people are in the back seat, they do have something else to do than just talk to each other and stare out. So it definitely will make road trips and things like that a little bit more fun and a little bit more enjoyable. But definitely love to know what you guys think. Are you thinking of installing anything at the rear of your car? And if you have done so, love to know your experiences. I want to thank pimpmyev.com for supplying us this review sample, for giving us the opportunity to test cool products like this. And if you haven't done so already, check out our video where we've installed a very necessary thing, which is a front instrument panel to the both Model 3 and Y. I'm really liking that upgrade, which I think is definitely quite useful and has little drawbacks. And if you're thinking of starting to kind of to customize your car, that's a great entry point. So definitely check out that video if you haven't done so already. I want to give you guys a big thank you for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you haven't done so already. Please make sure you're liked, subscribed, and have post notifications turned on. We'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care.